Welcome to Licking Non-Vanilla, a sex-positive hour of talk about kink, sexual mores, and writing dirty words. So grab a cup of cocoa, your favorite easy chair, and the lube as we go sailing into the dark, sweet waters of all things naughty. On Licking Non-Vanilla with your hosts Ralph Greco Jr. and M. Christian.
Hey everybody, welcome to Licking Non-Vanilla with Ralph Greco Jr. My co-hosts across the aisle, across the world, across my heart is...
Chris, otherwise known as M. Christian from Eugene, Oregon.
And today we have our first ever guest on the show, and that's Miss Ava. Hello, Miss Ava.
Hello, darling. How are you?
I'm good. And we go back a ways, you and I. You, me, and Chris actually go back a ways.
We do. Back to the creative sexuality days, I think. Although I didn't meet you till many years later.
Right.
And I don't remember if Chris even remembers talking. It was early days. You guys had creative sexuality. We were doing online courses, different people. And I think you guys were making erotica writing class. And
yes, we were. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It was a lot of fun. So, and then your charm just engaged me ever since then.
Of course. Aww. Chris, we hear this all the time, don't we?
You do.
Exactly. I'm frankly getting a little bored with it. I mean, we gotta liven this up a little bit. We gotta have the praise coming in from like little different directions, a little bit more enthusiasm. And actually,
it's tough being us. It really is.
Also, I want to give a hearty, meeting up because I've been talking to Dr. Amy Marsh, and I know you and she have both connections too.
Oh,
so
my goodness,
this is kind of a nice little combination thing here.
Yes, you were on the podcast. Didn't you do Love's Outer Limits with her recently?
Yes, exactly. I've been doing that now for a couple of weeks, and it's been absolutely delightful. In fact,
great.
We definitely want to talk about having you on that show.
Oh.
So we'll definitely be chatting about this.
Awesome.
It's
more of my
all
favorite
about
people.
synergy, you know?
It
exactly.
is.
Like, because everybody I know in this field, whether it's writing or teaching or seeing people one-on-one, are usually involved in more than one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say the same things, Ava? Or there's a lot of things going on?
Say that again. Repeat the question.
The question is that most of the people I know that are involved in the things we're involved in, whether it be teaching or writing or seeing people one-on-one, or podcasting, blogging, all this stuff we do, are involved in a lot of things.
Yeah. Very diverse.
Not just one avenue. So it all kind of tendrils, I don't know if it's because it is, we're throwing out a lot of tendrils to come back to what we do.
Yeah. Well, I think at least the people that even this group that we're talking about, just even this small group of people that we're just referring to here, they're smart, they're creative, they want to make a difference in the world. They're also very sex positive, and it all kind of comes together in there are different avenues to reach out and do that with people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's how we all find, like Chris just said, he knows somebody from another source. And
yeah.
There's all that kind of like intersections, and Chris and I have said over and over, what do we say about the bridge, Chris?
Yeah, don't burn any, that's for sure. It's like all of this is like one big weave of connections.
Yeah, it really is.
Like life.
Really. Right. True.
Indeed.
So Ava, let's talk a little about what you do, not how we met you, but what you do specifically.
Depends on how I'm painting it. I run a place called I work with men who feminize, and so I work primarily with men who cross-dress or in various stages of feminization and the resultant and the associated fantasies that go with them. So I do it, online through Night Threat and webcam, but I also have a place called the Sissy Parlor, which you have visited, Ralph, in one way or another.
Yeah, actually.
And been privy to some of our little adventures there. And so I own the Sissy Parlor, and I see clients there. And so there are men who either they already cross-dress and they want to be with someone to facilitate that or give them company or help them. Some of them are bucket listers. They've thought, most of them's a little more beyond bucket list. Maybe they've never done it before, but they by and large thought about it for a long time. And so I sort of facilitate that journey for them in a very safe, I think, affectionate environment. It's a little bit different than many. I'm a mistress, but I'm a little bit different. I'm not stern and strict and demanding and micromanaging like a lot of clients do need that. But the ones who come to me are more, I'm developmental. So I want to make them into my sweet little sissy sluts, or the best little sluts they can be. And that's that. So that's something I'm doing now. And then there's the Friends of Ava project, which I don't know if we talk about that.
Yeah, definitely want to get into that too.
Okay, good.
I think just first and foremost though, because people who listen to this show are as much kinksters as they are just everyday folks.
Okay.
So let's explain a little bit about, and it would be a broad definition, of course, what feminization is.
Okay. It's basically there is a long spectrum, but feminization means taking the masculine, a man, and bringing out the feminine in him, feminine energy. Usually that's done by dressing. Some might just wear panties. It ranges. Some might want to wear panties to bed every once in a while, and that's the extent that it goes, or maybe while they're masturbating or they're playing. There are others who feel it's a deeper identity, so it may not necessarily always be related to sexual erotic play. It might be just that's how they relax. They have that feminine, they just want to relax and let go of that burden that is manhood and be soft and pleasing. For the majority of them, it goes along with being submissive. They want to please. This drive to please gets stronger. And majority of them, when they're in femme mode, that desire to please extends to cock or pleasing men. And most of these guys, they're married or they identify as straight or bisexual. They generally would not go out cruising. They wouldn't go looking for just a guy to hook up with on their own. But when they're in their feminine, that becomes a very, very strong desire for a lot of them. And so, so I help them find outlets for that.
And Chris, let's go back a little bit to the days we talked about in San Francisco, in the scene way back when, what was the scene like for men who were interested in this kind of a fetish back then?
Well, it's interesting because when I was in, I'm still active in the scene, but not as much as I used to be. Back in the early 90s or so, late 80s, it was interesting because I actually knew, quite a few age play enthusiasts. And I've even gone to a couple of events with them and participated in things like tea parties and dress ups and all that kind of fun stuff. So it's like, it's interesting because it's like some people consider this as like not quite like, if there's even a term for it, mainstream kink, but it's been around for a long time and there's been enthusiasts, of course, for even longer. So it's just like, I have to say that it was really kind of a fun times and very interesting because I even though it's not my number one kinks, I just still think it's absolutely fascinating. And I love, hearing about it.
Yeah. And especially the way Ava does it. There's a nurturing to it that I haven't come across very often, And would you say that's true, Ava? Without touting your own horn, wouldn't you say that's true?
Well, I think I told you, when I first started I've been in the scene for quite a while, different areas, but when I started doing this professionally, I really had some concerns about how that would play out because I knew I didn't want to play a scene. I didn't want to play a role. I wanted to do something that was enjoyable. I'm also I'm not harsh, I'm not demanding, I'm not domineering. I'm pretty a laid back, nurturing kind of developmental kind of person. And so initially I was a little bit concerned that if I wasn't that I had that more nurturing, natural, not matronly, don't not do matronly, but more of a more of a protective feminine force for them. That there were a lot that responded to that for that reason. And so it makes it easier for me because I can just be myself. If somebody wants something that I really can't provide, if I feel like I'm doing something theatrical, it's too much of a stretch for my natural personality, I'll usually just send it to another mistress friend or something that has because every dom has her own style. Yeah, but that seems to work. And I'll also make the distinction too, kind of piggybacking on something Chris said, because you mentioned age play, because there's age play and there's littles and then there's sissy babies, right? That in age play, and they like, cute little socks and very cute. Most of what I get, strangely enough, are not the frilly sissies, though I get a few. Most of them, they want to be sluts. They want to learn to be sexy and attract men, but nevertheless, they still want more of a guide and a mentor to help and push them past the edge sometimes.
Hey, Chris and Ava, would you both say to the mainstream, the person on the outside looking in, and I found this, and I think Chris and I would discuss this before, that age play, feminization, those things tend to bring about a great big stigma, more than some kitten with a whip. I wonder, is that because we fear that in ourselves, or it's just so anathema to quote unquote normal life for some people?
Can you rephrase the question a little bit?
No.
I'm sorry. No.
I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. No. There's certain kinks that spark a whole bunch of controversy in the mainstream world. After 50 Shades of Grey came out, people kind of swallowed easier, and I use the word swallow in a very very loose way. That whole idea of leather and whips and master and mistress, slave stuff. But the things we're talking about here seem to come along with a lot of possible prejudice. And I'm wondering why that is. Because, obviously, Ava, the way you do it is very soft and very nurturing. So, if anything, it's not aggressive. But I was just wondering why...
why that's edgier?
Stuff like feminization and littles and role play, that kind of stuff, sparks a lot of controversy in people. Discuss.
Well, I guess, if you've got a woman, let's say, and she wants to, they suddenly make her more, they're taking a personality that's not a part of a personality. I'm riffing here because I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
But when I think about things like,
we're not gonna hold you to anything.
Okay, good. When you think about things like, so there's such strong social stigmas about masculine and feminine being done. And I'm hoping that disappears a little bit with the younger one, but there is there. And so stepping into that role and being something you've been told all your life is going to make you weaker, a sissy, not strong, not able to survive in the world, I think that's edgy. I think it actually threatens people much more. There are some mistresses who don't really like whirling with cross-dressers or sissies because of that, and age play goes even more into it. Now with me, I do take adult babies, but it's never eroticized for me, right? It's a completely let's watch cartoons and change your diaper and that's it. And so even that is edgy for some, just even the age play, and then of course other people get into age play where it is a much more eroticized. And it's fantasy, it's two grown consenting adults doing what they want to do, but I think because there are such strong taboos against both of those things, they're very specific in our society, whereas about a woman being a little more aggressive, for example, or a woman letting herself be submissive, might be a little less of a stretch. And that's what I have. That's my thought.
Okay, Chris. Now you.
I completely agree. Next question.
See, that's how he gets out of it, Abe, all the time.
I'm talking too much. Oh, God, I'm usually so quiet.
I completely agree, because I do think it's like our culture, especially Western American culture, has this real problem with masculinity. In other words, they treat it as this kind of sacred animal that anything that challenges it is instantly like they just freak out. And it's like, I hope, like you just said, Ava, it's like I hope this is something that will grow out of, because it's really toxic. I mean, it's just like so many people out there judge everything they do and everything that's said about them through this distorted lens of will this make me less of a man? It's like just grow up. It's like it's all on a spectrum. It's all on a scale, and there's nothing wrong with engaging and playing with all kinds of different aspects of behavior and things you enjoy that aren't always labeled masculine.
Right. Ugh. The shame is very deep seated. I mean, especially on Night Flirt. I had one just this morning, actually, called a younger guy. And he legitimately, he was 22, actually, much younger than the people I usually talk to. And he was trying to come to terms with these urges that he had to dress. And it was like, do other people do? You would think he would know, but he just needed the reassurance that there was something wrong with him. And that he was broken for life because he wanted to wear panties and he fantasized about sucking cock. And the damage from the shame was what would do damage to the poor boy, not dressing up in panties and sucking cock. So, it's really frustrating sometimes to see, but it's also, for me at least, a joy to be able to bring them past that, at least the ones I can.
Right. Yeah, give them a little peace.
Yeah. Now,
I should say, you have reached Licking Non-Vanilla, just to let you know where you're at.
Okay.
And we're talking with Miss Ava. And of course, my co-host, as always, M. Christian, or Chris to his friends, but so you have to call him M. Christian. Ava, tell us about the Friends of Ava.
Okay, Friends of Ava. So Friends of Ava actually was sort of an offshoot of the fact that, so my clients, I screen all my clients very carefully. I do a background check and these sort of things. So over time, though, like I said, a lot of them want to find playmates. They want to find cock to play with, or other people, or cross-dressers to play with, all right? So
normal Friday night.
Normal Friday night. The problem is a lot of them, a lot of my clients, they're executives, they go on Grindr or Tinder, there's a lot of bullshit that people have to go through, and I'm using my non-lady voice today. A lot of bullshit they have to go through to even meet anybody. There's all kinds of problems. So some of my clients kept saying, well, do you know anybody I can play with? Or Miss Ava, I'm going to London. Do you have any friends there that might want to get together? It's like, you know what? No, but I should. Because I kept seeing this problem of meeting playmates who were legitimate people and you didn't have to worry about them so much. So I put together it's called a private network of cross-dressers, transgendered, male bottoms, and male admirers. And so it's basically for guys who cross-dress, who want to feminize if they're a bottom, or they're a male top, who like to have their sissies to play with. A way of meeting people within my website, and we're also doing webinars and things like that. So it's basically a closed private group of pre-screened playmates. So everybody in the club I've met or talked to and screened. And so people will have sort of I guess I can think of it as a fraternity, a sorority, of people that they know or can get in touch with and expand their circle of friends and play with relatively safely. So that's Friends of Ava.
I would think, Chris, like back in the day, the hardest thing to do was screen people to find them and figure and if they were okay to play with and stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful idea, Ava. That's fantastic. I think that's actually brilliant. I completely want to, support you in that, because it's like, it is like very tricky to like make connections. There's still so much of a stigma attached to it. That's so positive. I'm really applauding that.
Oh,
especially in a niche situation.
Yes. And the other thing, I've had at least 2 friends or clients who have been victims of blackmailing, very high-tech blackmailing through regular dating sites. All it takes is to get them to build some trust, and got into their computer, somehow opened a link. Anyway, it was a nightmare for both of them. And and it was very convincing, but you don't know who you're talking to on the other side. And it was traumatic, right? And all they want to do is play and have fun and not have to worry about.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's nothing but positive that they want, Yeah. And they get all this black evil stuff coming into their lives.
Yeah, life's too short. So
no kidding.
So yeah. So that's
Ava, tell us where people could find you.
Well, they can Google me, Ava Durga, AVADURGA. The Friends of Ava is just friendsofava.com. And the Sissy Parlor, which is kind of, the site needs to be upgraded, but is just the sissyparlor.com. And on Night Flirt also.
Night Flirt. And what I'll do too is I'll put up a blog around the time that the show is going to go up, so people can find all your stuff on there.
Marby, because we're just getting Friends of Ava started, so I'll be taking applications by then probably.
good, and we'll get a picture up of you and all that great stuff, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
So what's the, I don't know, the takeaway, the most important takeaway in the work you do?
Oh boy. That your own desires are absolutely fine. You're not, it's a very basic sort of thing that applies to every kink. If you're doing something that's making you feel good and giving you some joy and expanding yourself, or I tell a lot of my clients who worry, and they say, what if I'm becoming feminine? Am I losing my masculinity? It's like, no, you're expanding yourself. You're expanding it. So being open to who you are and not being ashamed, and finding friends.
Yeah. They just spreading the love, right?
Spread the love. That's right. Mutual respect and caring, and it multiplies.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just such positive stuff, you know.
Yeah, and the fun is always.
As long as it's consensual, I mean, it's like, go for it. I mean, if no one's being hurt, then, you know, absolutely. I think it's fine that people, you know, as long as it's consensual and safe, then go for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, and I think there's something to be learned about keeping your own counsel too. You're doing your thing and finding someone or people that are interested in consenting, but not getting so worried about what the other guy's doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just kind of minding your own business in that way.
Fun, right? And it's a really good,
not a bad
yeah. And it's a good way to bring beauty. Have you ever worn panties, Ralph?
Hello?
Just Ralph, our next topic is.
I just love how it got real silent there, Chris.
I was just curious if you knew what it felt like.
You know, Chris,
I can't believe I made Ralph Greco speechless.
Well,
this is a red letter day.
You know.
I can feel the blush halfway across the country.
Where's your blood going? That's a clue.
Yeah. No, what I was hoping for was that Chris would give me the entree with, of course.
Oh, sorry.
And then I could just say ditto, you know.
Oh no, I'm not letting you off that easy. Oh no.
Good job, Chris.
Sorry. Nope, relationship's great, but I'm not giving you that. So it's like you're on your own, Robin.
My answer to this would be, who doesn't? You know.
That's right. Good.
And you mean not on my head, right?
I didn't specify, but
right, there you go. It depends how drunk you are at a frat party.
It's one way to wear a mask. Hey, if you're out of mask.
So where are you going with that?
I think we should make panty masks.
Right on. Yeah. But yeah. So what was your question there? You asked me that question. I demurred.
Yes, you did.
And now, what was the follow-up?
Oh, there was no follow-up. I was going to ask you. Then I was probably going to ask you about what kind they were and how you felt wearing them. Who put them on you?
You know, I don't know if I have a preference.
Mm-hmm. Silky or cotton.
When that mood has struck me, if it has struck me.
Mm-hmm. Hypothetically.
Hypothetically, right? Of course, yeah. You know, it depends kind of what else I'm wearing, kind of mood I'm in, you know. If it's my time, you know. Yeah, there's things you have to be considered. Yeah.
All these, it's important. Well, a lot of guys do. They just put on panties at night.
Fantastic. I knew I could spin something with you. You know. But you know, I think what we just had there was a fun moment. But what we try to propagate, all of us, is this idea of that this stuff should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
It should come from the well of good feelings and arousal and positiveness all the time, right?
Undoubtedly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
when it becomes work, it's not. What's the point? And I get the best of it because when I see Bob the engineer turn into Babette the little sissy slut tart in the matter of an hour, there's nothing more fun than that.
Yeah.
Or panties or strap-ons or butt plugs or whatever.
Did you hear what she said, Chris? She slipped that in too. Butt plugs, strap-ons.
Just adding some color, darling.
You know, also, let's just leave this on this one question I have, because out of all the things I've been reading lately, because Chris and I seriously do a lot of research with the writing, you know, things we don't know about. or trends, and we write for a couple places where we update on niche and trends and all that kind of stuff. And Chris is up to date on futurism and sex. It seems to me that there's a rise in the idea of chastity. What do you think about that? Do you find that in your work?
Are you asking me? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. In fact, I thought I saw not long ago that chastity and cuckolding were two of the top search terms on, it was Pornhub or different areas.
Interesting, right, Chris?
That surprises me. I mean, well, it's not a surprise because, it's very popular, but I didn't know it was that popular. But now that makes a lot of sense in some ways. I mean, it is one of those things where it's like, I don't know. I think it has to do with control, giving up control. So it makes kind of like a lot of sense in that regard. But no, I think it's fascinating.
What do you think, Ava? Do you think there's a reason for that nowadays?
I don't know if there would be. Think of why there would be a reason. The only thing I might speculate, and this is completely shooting from the hip, is greater interest in spiritual, energetic, tantric sort of practice in sexuality and that intersection. There's so much in terms of sexual transmutation with energy. Even if you go back to Napoleon Hill and you read Think and Grow Rich, this book he written by all these, that a lot of them use something called sexual transmutation. I've met several very successful men, and they routinely practice restricting their orgasms, ejaculation, not orgasms, that it amps them up. They like the feeling it gives them. They feel it makes them more productive. I personally like it because I think it's fun to get them really amped up, and then I get to be the one who decides if they come or not. And if they do, but that's the only reason I can think of if there might have been an increase, and honestly I haven't been doing it long enough to have a long-term view of popularity. But it is fascinating.
The things come and go, and the waves, it's interesting to see why these things might happen in the cultural zeitgeist and why they don't,
I just wonder, it just occurred to me also, just because porn is so much easier to get and everywhere, and something that's unusual is sexier than the usual, and so the idea of containing your orgasm instead of, when you've got all this porn around you and you could come as much as you want to, that might hold an appeal.
That's true. Just another. It's, you have so much of something, denying yourself of the thing might be the arousing thing in itself.
A theory, maybe. Just something to occur.
Well, Ava, we can't thank you enough for this.
Oh, I've loved being here. The time's flown.
Yeah, it has.
I love you guys.
We're half an hour in.
Oh my God! How long do we go?
I know.
Are we done?
Yeah. Well, I think because we're gonna Chris and I are gonna tackle a couple of things.
Okay.
I think.
Awesome.
But we love you so much and thank you so much.
I love you guys.
Thank you very, very much. This has been delightful. We gotta have her on again. That's for sure.
Oh, we will.
Oh, anytime.
This has been a lot of fun.
This is why we started. This is why we're doing a shorter one today, Ava, with you, because this is our first salvo across the bow.
I didn't know I was the first, but I love being the first. Of lots of things.
You broke our cherry.
Good. Oh, okay. History goes down. All right, guys. Love you both. I'll talk to you very soon.
Oh, you
Thanks.
too, babe.
Okay.
You too.
Bye, hon.
Thank you
Thanks
so
again,
much.
Ava.
You're welcome.
Thanks
How do I
again.
hang up?
Just hang up.
Okay. Ta-da. Okay. Bye, guys.
We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So what do you think, Chris?
That was wonderful. Ava is such a dream, and it's like, I'm so glad to reconnect with her because, again, you've actually been chatting with her quite a bit, and I just sort of like one of those rare people I kind of just like lost touch with. But that was absolutely delightful. Definitely, definitely people should check out her site and look her up because she really is a wonderful person, and I love what she's doing here because it is one of those things that I think needs to have greater exposure and definitely more support.
Yeah, and I will get up all that information on the site. Once by the time this show airs, we'll make sure it goes all up there.
Exactly.
It was just interesting to get a perspective about, because these days we're getting a lot of talk and writing and experience about the trans and the bi-gender question. We have been getting that lately. And I think lots of people are confused by it, people who are not going through that experience. I have
exactly. I think it's wonderful. I mean, we need more exposure of this because it is something that it is, one, it's something that needs to happen more, and two, it's like people need a lot of support around it because it can get confusing, and people who are like, changing or altering or, becoming who they really are and need as much support as possible. So, something like, what Ava's doing is really wonderful. I mean, it's like she's touching on so many things that I think need to be, given much more attention and respect.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have a personal connection to this. I have a buddy who's he's there's I don't want to get too much away, but he's someone's close to him has been transitioning recently, and I also know someone else, a couple people, and the person who isn't transitioning is having a problem understanding the person transitioning. The person transitioning is having a problem with that person understanding them. And then there is the whole drama of the thing itself, the actual, the meat, the guts and the meat and taters of the thing. And I remember having a discussion with the person who's in the undergoing the transition and saying to them, you have to come to the at least allow for the understanding that the other person is having is in their own confusion. You're in your confusion. You're dealing with their confusion because you're very close to this person and getting all the blowback and the prejudice and all that stuff, right? But at the same time, the third part of the equation is you don't have to, but it would behoove you to at least open yourself to try to understand that they're having the confusion they're having. And that way, I hope, and I'm not saying this always works, but that way, at least you give yourselves, everybody involved, a little bit of a okay. Let's take a breath and acknowledge that this is difficult for all of us.
Absolutely, and I think that's very important that people. I mean, I never understand people's upset by this because it's not affecting you. I mean, yes, you might have to learn a new gender pronoun or learn to use terms like they or whatever the preference is. That's not exactly a huge thing. So why are people so upset by this? I just do not understand why they're so angry. Well, I mean, yes, if someone as a friend who goes through transition, there's going to be some adjustment. But again, if they're a friend, you support them. I mean, if one of my friends said that they're going through transition, it's like, of course, I love them and care about them. So I want to be there with them as much as possible and, support their decision. That's not an easy thing to decide. This is not something done, casually. So why people get upset by this, I simply just do not understand it. I mean, it just comes down to basic bigotry, I guess.
Well, and fear.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Fear, exactly. I mean,
fear's a driver, and I think, it depends where you, like, someone from my parents' generation would have a very hard time understanding. So they would probably, I'm not saying my parents directly, but whoever it is, would react with fear, like, especially if it's something like, say it's your child, right? So that fear and that whatever, and which manifests itself in a whole bunch of different ways, right? Prejudice, and, misunderstandings, and closing the person out of your life, all that stuff that we don't want. That fear, I think, if we acknowledge it, and even the person transitioning, and if the person who's having the problem, fear, can acknowledge it, if people could just sit down and say, "Look, I understand you're confused. That I'm no longer who you knew me to be. I'm this other person now, or I'm identifying with another sex now than you knew me to be." Then and I accept that you're upset. You just have to accept the fact that this is happening. So let's try to find a place where we can meet. Where we say, okay, I accept your fear, and I accept your worry over it, and all that stuff, and where you're coming from. But let's talk about it. And we could all just kind of like take a breath a little bit and meet just even a little bit further in the middle, because
a lot of it's also. Go ahead.
No, I just. Go ahead.
I mean, a lot of it's also exposure. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, for a long time, this was something that was very unusual and people didn't hear about. So naturally, they reacted out of, trepidation and anxiety. But now it's like, these issues around gender transition and just new forms of gender roles like masculine and femininity and everything else, and like the coming, like I love the way that the gender neutral term of they and them is becoming more and more accepted. I think it's like it's one of those things. It's like as people get more and more exposed to it, it kind of comes. It'll become a lot easier because again, it's not something that seems all that challenging. Some people are always going to be upset by it, but that's just the nature of people just being ignorant. But I'm so glad when I see like mainstream representation and I see it appearing more and more prevalently in all kinds of different media. The same thing with like different orientations showing up. It's like a long way to go. I think as more and more visibility is out there and people realize this isn't something that is frankly all that unusual anymore, it's going to be a lot easier to process.
Yeah, and I think that it's another thing too. We touched on this at a couple shows ago too. It's certainly okay, and I use that term very, very subjectively, the term okay. It's certainly okay to have your prejudices. You could think and do anything you want to do if it doesn't impinge on anybody else, right? But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
you can view the they person as just an aberrant and something you can't deal with. You certainly can do that. You're well within your right. The thing is, it's going to be harder to get through the world, especially these days, with that kind of an attitude. But you certainly can do it if you want. But I think that if you can just even I don't know, because I know someone who's suffering through their own limitations at the moment with the person they know who's transitioning. And you can say, well, it's his problem. It's his problem. It's his problem. Well, yeah, it is within him. It's his problem. But first of all, I don't want to see him suffering. Second of all, it makes the relationship he's having with this person who's transitioning harder, So he certainly can stay in that mindset and live it up all he wants. But I think if there's just a little bit of like, he goes a little bit this way and that person goes, a little bit of like angling towards an understanding. At least an understanding that there's two different ways of looking at it. You may never understand it, but at least you understand. Okay, well, that person has their thing. I don't know where they're coming from. It's not my worldview, but I respect that they can have their thing. That's really what we're asking for, right? Is equal.
Yeah, I think once again, as long as it doesn't affect anybody. I mean, it's like if you act out on your bigotry or your prejudice, that's a different thing. That's where it turns into like abuse and assault and everything else. It's like but I also think it's like once again, if you care for someone, you should try and like work as much as possible. And that again, in the grand scheme of things, this is a lot to ask. I mean, yes, it can be kind of jarring sometimes when someone goes through transition, but at the same time, it's like if you care about them, then that's if you care about them as a friend, if you care about them otherwise, that's something that's important because it's important to them. But yeah, it's just like I think it's like it's like expecting people to change their complete attitude is unrealistic. But at the same time, it's like I do think it's like it's something that people should work at least a little bit to try because they care about the person. Or also it's like you said, it's like it's a burden. I mean carrying anger and bigotry is exhausting, and it's going to fracture you after a certain amount of points. So I think it's important to try and like understand the world is changing, and I think it's changing for the better. Because now it's like beforehand this was, I mean, it still is to a major extent stigmatized, but now it's like it's gaining more and more momentum as just being part of life and something that happens. The same way that gender roles are changing, the same way that gay marriage is no longer an issue for many, many people, and legally, thank goodness. It's just like this is the way the world is changing, and it's the sooner they accept it, the sooner the better, because it's not going to go back. And expecting people to like stop being who they are now they have an opportunity to finally be the person they've always been inside is cruel. But yeah, I just think it's also like it's like a big change on so many levels, and I think that's a large part of why this is such a big hot topic is it's like, it's like for some people, it's like this is just, part of the evolution of society, and they certainly have to work with it and move beyond. But other people, it's like this is a massive threat for some reason about everything they think the world is or should be, which is just like, grow up. The world doesn't exist for you.
Yeah, and well, that's the whole thing too. That's a good statement. It doesn't exist for you. Your world, the way you look at it is fine, but don't try to impress. And I don't care what it is you're trying to impress on me. Do you? That's fine. And if in you doing you and me doing me, we don't get along because of that. Well, that's okay. It's gonna happen sometimes. There are people that I know. There's people that can't be friends. I just certainly know this. There's people that can't be friends with someone with a different political point of view, which is just as silly to me as you can't get along with somebody who identifies as a they. It just doesn't. It seems kind of like at the end of the day, I kind of know who I am and what I want, and I'm fine with that, and just live your life, man, But
I just want to be as supportive as possible because to be honest, it's like I have not experienced this. I have just by luck and societal. I just kind of came into this role of being like not exactly someone who's experienced a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And so it's like I want to be as supportive as possible because I can barely imagine how challenging and difficult and scary and frightening and upsetting this can be to go through this. So it's like that's what I don't understand. It's like how can you be cruel to someone who's already showing more bravery than the people who are having these issues will ever be able to experience. I mean, just think about how brave and strong and frankly beautiful it is to decide I am this person. I've always been this person, and now I'm going to live as this person, and to go out in the world. That's a tremendous amount of bravery. So the least we could do is respect that. I mean, this isn't like a casual decision. This is not like, and for God's sakes, it's not a slight against you as a person. It's that's why I just don't understand people who aren't supportive, because again, it's like, this is done because this person is living the life and living the person they've always been, and now have an opportunity to do that. It's like the least you could do is like acknowledge how brave and strong they are. I mean, but anyway, I'm just going on my soapbox.
No, or it could come down to simply, I don't care, not in a bad way. I just don't care. That's your business. Like, why can't it just be that's your business? Right? It just, I mean, hard enough minding our own business, right? I mean, we go through the day, trying to get through my own day, just minding my own business. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to try to get into somebody else's life,
And again, it's like it's not about you. I mean, this whole thing, it's like it's such an American thing. We want to stick our nose into everybody's business. We want to tell them how to live their lives, and and for some reason this is threatening, and some reason this is like challenging. It's like it's if your world is that fragile, it's like. Seriously, I mean, if your masculinity, if your belief in what America or whatever should be is that fragile, then you got a lot more issues than gender politics. I mean, it's just like and gender identity, because this is like you're talking about like looking at the world like everything's a threat and everything's going to destroy your precious illusions of how things should be. It's like grow up. This is 2020. I mean, it's like. It's this, we're living in the freaking future here. It's time to evolve.
Right. Well, Chris, we're at Licking Non-Vanilla. I want to let everybody know that. We've got about 15 minutes left of the show, and we're tackling some heady issues today because we talked to Miss Ava before, and she hipped us to what she did with the men who come to her, the sissies who come to her and enjoy that part of their sexuality, to be able to, feel safe and explore what they want in that way, And
I think what she's doing is wonderful. I love particularly how she says she's a nurturing top, which I think
she's
a really special thing, because sometimes tops think they have to be cruel, or they have to be harsh, or they have to be not caring. It's just like I love hearing her say that. That was wonderful.
Yeah, it's in her nature to be nurturing. I mean, she just isn't. she just isn't that kind of woman, And I think, and like she said, she doesn't enjoy adapting a theater role to it, to feeling she's got to play a role in order to do her work. But there's plenty of people that do, and that's fine. We've talked to plenty of them, and we're friends with plenty of people who adopt a certain role in the kink that they do, whether for play or for profit, and that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. They adapt and adopt certain archetypes, tropes that we've seen over and over again in the scene. But
I've had direct experience with that one, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's good and bad, right? I mean, it works sometimes and it doesn't work sometimes.
Exactly. I mean, in my case, it didn't work, but that was just, it was not necessarily a fault of people involved. It was just one of those things that didn't quite work as well as, didn't work for my needs particularly. But yeah, it's like, once again, it has to do with style. It's like some people have prefer a more, a DNS, dominance and submission relationship where, someone is, more nurturing. Some people don't like that. And it's just all a matter of communication and negotiation again.
Right. And that is the two keys there, and that's true in any relationship you have. Communication being the key, whether it's a boss and an employee, your siblings, your parents, or a lover. Communication is the way you find out about each other, and you find those things that you enjoy and don't enjoy, and how you deal with each other. Because without communication, you're dead. You're dead in the water without communication.
Exactly, and communication with yourself as well. I mean, yes, you need to communicate with you need to communicate with your spouse or partner or something similar. But I think it's also important to communicate with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Find out where your emotions are coming from, and how you're reacting. So it's definitely communication is absolutely key. And it's one of those things, unfortunately, like a lot of people don't understand. So they just kind of think these things happen. It's like, no, I'm sorry, but you got to talk to each other.
Yeah, and that. What you said too, which is you said this before too, we were talking about polyamory, about thinking about considering and communicating yourself. Your needs can change. Because the human animal changes. And what you may have wanted with one person, what you may have wanted 3 years ago, can be totally different than what you want right now. And
absolutely,
those things change. So if you think you're in a constant state of flux and change, then why couldn't it be true for your partner? And it will be goddamn true for your partner.
Absolutely. I think that's you're completely spot on with that one. And thank you for saying that, because it is one of those things where, communication is not just you do it once and that's it. I mean, you got to keep doing it. And especially if you're doing things like, BDSM or something similar where, attitudes can change and so forth. And then it's also, I think, important that not only should there be constant communication, but there also should be constant communication without intimidation. In other words, it's like, someone who says someone, if you feel scared or insecure or worried about expressing your needs, that's a warning sign.
Right. You're in a bad place.
That's something, exactly. That's when something is not working, because everyone should be able to say, I love you. That's not working.
Yeah,
or,
right.
It's like, something's happened and we need to talk about it. And if someone says, well, that's the end of the relationship, you're not going to say anything. So it's like, that's intimidation, and that's really can be toxic.
Yeah. And if at the end of the day, in the relationship you're in, and again, we're not just talking about a sexual relationship. In the relationship you're in, if you cannot be yourself, you're not going to be at your best, right? And you're never going to feel comfortable where you're at. And that's the end of the day. You need to be able to express yourself, like Chris is saying, be yourself, what you need, and explore that, and know that your partner is open to all that and will listen to you. Maybe not understanding directly all the time, but will at least listen to you and respect your opinion. Because you don't get that, boy, you're in trouble.
Absolutely.
So let that stand as the end of Licking Non-Vanilla, and a very important lesson to learn. Chris, thanks so much, man. As always, it's a blast talking to you.
Absolutely wonderful, Ralph. Absolutely. We definitely got to get Ava back on again.
Oh, absolutely.
That's for sure.
She's the bee's knees.
That was absolutely dream.
She's definitely the bee's knees. So we'll see you next time in Licking Non-Vanilla. This is Ralph Greco Jr.
and Christian, otherwise known as Chris.
And we'll see you soon, right?
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
And visit us on the web at www.lickingnonvanilla.com.